Unveiled Truth: The Amazing Transformation of Erdmannsdorff, from Unspeakable Atrocities to Justice. Lucy Erdmannsdorff stood at the crossroads of truth and family legacy, heart racing as a dusty box lay sprawled open on the floor of her grandfather's dilapidated home. Crumpled photographs and yellowing letters whispered secrets of a history she had never imagined. The name Erdmannsdorff had always filled her with pride. Now it felt like a shackle, dragging her to a past riddled with grave mistakes. What were these stories of deepest conflict that her town desired to forget? Her fingers trembled as she lifted a letter, ink barely legible, signed by her grandfather during a time when the world was plunged into chaos. As a history teacher, she prided herself on unveiling the truth for her students. Yet how could she teach what her family had wrought, atrocities that had occurred under the guise of war? An internal storm raged within her, a mix of shame and fierce loyalty. How could she reconcile her role as an educator with the tainted heritage she had just begun to uncover? She had always taught her students that history was a path illuminated by truth, yet now she felt the darkness swirling around her. Each revelation felt like a betrayal, not just to herself, but to the generations who suffered from the very actions her bloodline had participated in. The tension thickened, her breath came in short bursts as she grappled with what this meant for her identity. She wanted to honor her grandfather, but felt his choices were a betrayal to her ideals. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second intensifying her despair. She thought of her students, bright-eyed and eager to learn, their lives untouched by the weighty complexities she now faced. Would they understand, or would their innocence be clouded by the shadows of her family's past? The tension in her chest tightened like a vice. She envisioned the town hall meeting that loomed ahead, where she would unveil her findings, an act of courage that felt almost insurmountable. With each unsealed letter, her mind raced with contradictions. Loyalty pulled her to defend her grandfather, while truth urged her to expose the unspeakable. Would her community meet her revelations with understanding or hostility? Panic whispered in the back of her mind, painting doomsday scenarios that felt achingly real. The historian, the self-proclaimed guardian of the town's past, would not take kindly to her revelations. The anxious anticipation of confrontation sent shivers down her spine. The room felt smaller, closer now, as memories of laughter at family gatherings contorted into sharp reminders of betrayal. She could almost hear her grandfather's laughter mingling with those letters, but now it rang hollow. Was she ready to confront not just her past, but the collective amnesia of her community? The night ahead promised clarity or chaos, yet her breath quickened with the weight of what only restlessness could predict. Each decision felt monumental, her heart pounding at the precipice of revelation. The call for change echoed, not just within her own spirit, but across the fabric of her community. With burgeoning resolve, she gripped the letters tighter, knowing this was only the beginning. As the time to speak drew closer, she lifted her gaze to meet the long, uncertain journey ahead. Because the truth she harbored was on a collision course with harsh realities that could shift her all too fragile understanding of who she was and what she would become. The unresolved tension of her heritage hung in the air, crackling with unspoken fears, shaping an uncertain future whose shape lay hidden just beyond the horizon. The air was thick with tension as Lucy sat in the town hall, a stark contrast to the bright classrooms she had once filled with eager young minds. The wooden chairs creaked under the weight of the gathered townsfolk, their murmurs swirling around her, intensifying her sense of isolation. She had prepared meticulously for this moment, drafting her speech countless times, but now the words felt lodged in her throat, paralyzed by doubt.
Her heart pounded, echoing in her ears as she glanced around the room, searching for a sympathetic face amid the wary expressions. Would they understand her pain? As the mayor nodded to her, Lucy felt the weight of the unseen expectations pressing down further, her resolve wavering. She was no longer just Lucy, the beloved history teacher. She was the bearer of a legacy that desecrated the very fabric of their shared history. Stepping toward the podium, she took a deep breath, grounding herself in the reality of her purpose. The letters in her hands felt heavy, laden with both guilt and the promise of liberation. This wasn't just about her family. It was about the secrets hidden beneath the town's surface, the ghosts that needed confronting. With each heartbeat echoing loud in her chest, she summoned her courage, determined to transform this moment into a pivotal door for herself and those who had suffered from the shadows of history. Thank you for being here today. I stand before you not just as a teacher, but as a member of this community. Her voice cracked, betraying her nerves, yet she pushed forward. What I am about to share may disturb you. It disturbs me profoundly, but it is a truth that needs to be uncovered. She watched as some faces reflected disbelief, others anger. Any semblance of her intended delivery shattered in the face of their reactions, but she pressed on, recounting her discoveries, the photographs, the letters, the accounts of betrayal disguised as valor. Each revelation eroded the trust that her family name had once signified, and the atmosphere thickened with an anguish that mirrored her own turmoil. As she articulated her grandfather's choices in the egregious actions taken in the name of honor, faces transformed from skeptical to incredulous, shaping her experience into a confrontation with a collective past. Whispers rippled through the audience like ripples of a stone thrown into still water. She could not pretend this didn't affect her as well. Tears brimmed in her eyes, her voice trembling as she paved the path for reconciliation through truth rather than denial. Silence blanketed the room as she finished, a visceral truth hanging like a guillotine. Would they reject her? Would they see this not as an act of betrayal, but of courage? The eyes in the room shifted, some filled with pain and some with anger, and Lucy braced herself for the backlash she sensed was inevitable. A hand shot up. It was Martha, respected and revered, a historian herself, custodian of the town's memory. "You can't just rewrite history because it doesn't fit your narrative." Martha's voice cut through the silence, sharp as glass. The standoff ignited a blaze of conflicting feelings within Lucy. Her fight-or-flight instinct stirred, conflict brewed. "But we must confront our past, or we'll be doomed to repeat it." The determination coursing through her was as palpable as the fear gripping her heart. In that charged moment, Lucy realized that this was more than a call for truth. It was a tumultuous awakening of her own identity, her role as an educator intertwined with the very fabric of their history. The crowd was no longer just an audience. They were potential allies in dialogue, or powerful foes. Here lay a crossroads. Would they acknowledge and heal, or bury the wounds deeper? As the tension mounted, a resolve crystallized within her. She needed to be the catalyst for change she hoped to see. Yet, standing at this precipice, an unsettling question remained. What would the cost of this resolve be, not just for herself, but for the town she called home? The uncomfortable silence stretched on, broken only by the uncertain hum of shifting allegiances yet to be revealed. Lucy inhaled, ready to push past discomfort into the unknown, for the moment stood on the knife's edge of history, and her future hung in the balance, waiting for her next words to carve it anew. The silence felt suffocating, a heavy blanket that draped over Lucy as she faced the room full of voiceless objections. She clenched the podium, her knuckles white with the pressure of uncertainty. What was she risking? Her reputation? Her position? Perhaps her very place in this community that was beginning to feel like a foreign land? When Martha spoke again, her voice etched with incredulity, Lucy prepared herself. A barrage of confrontational opinions. You think that sharing your family's dark history will change anything? It will tear us apart." The murmurs that followed proved Martha's point, fueling embers of dissent in the air. Yet beneath her mounting apprehension, a flicker of defiance ignited. Lucy had never been one to cower from great challenges. She had spent years molding young minds, instilling courage and curiosity, qualities that now demanded her attention. She sought for something to grab hold of, a counterpoint to procure her voice. But isn't that the paradox? We are already divided by secrets. If we bury the truth, how can we heal? A wave of uncertainty swept over the audience, and Lucy recognized a series of glances exchanged among the townsfolk. Some bore a trace of empathy, a reflection that hinted at her own turmoil. Perhaps, just perhaps, they too felt the pang of conflicted heritage. "I stand here not denying my family's past, but seeking to understand it," Lucy continued, finding her footing again as she spoke. "Every person in this room has their own version of history. Let us bring it all together and confront it. Recognizing our flaws does not strip us of our dignity, it can elevate us." Skepticism still lingered, but her convictions seemed to soften some sharp edges. The audience was no longer a static entity. It morphed and shifted like a living organism that reacted to her challenge. Her passion, unfiltered now, poured forth. Change is painful, yes, but living in lies compounds that pain. Rather than isolating us further, let's employ this truth as a bridge towards understanding. As she spoke, Lucy sensed a transition within herself. She was no longer merely a vessel of information. A leader had begun to emerge, one grounded in vulnerability, yet emboldened by honesty. She felt the contours of her self-worth redefine themselves, as if her spirit were unfurling toward the sun. A hand raised again, this time from a younger man near the back, a face unsure yet curious. "What if we choose to embrace this past?" he asked, his voice trembling with the weight of his question. "How do we know we won't lose more than we gain?" "That is the risk we all must face together," Lucy replied, her tone softening but firm. "What is lost in silence can never be reclaimed, but what we may find in truth can be transformative." It was a gamble, yet there was no turning back. Her journey had only just begun. This moment felt both exhilarating and terrifying, a revelation infiltrating her resolve. Lucy scanned the room, shifting from one face to another, some open to discussion, others hardened by disbelief. This was progress, albeit tentative, but she had learned the lesson of patience through her years of teaching. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but for the first time, it felt possible. With every small victory against the hesitation, eruptions of hope dripped into her heart, mingling with her doubts. Clarity dawned. She needed to gather them for a more profound discourse, to facilitate dialogues that could pave a path to recovery from the shadows hovering over their history. As hands began to rise, each one representing questions or support, Lucy realized she was standing at the brink of something pivotal, not just for her, but for those around her. All of a sudden, they were no longer just passive observers. They were engaged in a battle against obfuscation, stirring to life a collective pulse she once thought extinguished. Lucy stepped back from the podium, heart racing with the knowledge that she would need to prove herself worthy of this path, through dialogue, confrontation, and empathy. The town still lingered on the precipice of acceptance, but she had become a catalyst. The real question now was, what had she truly begun? With reverberations of uncertainty still echoing in her veins, she knew she would need allies, ones willing to brave this uncharted territory alongside her. There would be challenges ahead, each one demanding every ounce of resilience she could muster. As she surveyed the room, determination surged through her. The next step was delicate, but the moment for reflection had arrived, and Lucy was ready to embrace the inevitable changes ahead. A dialogue was burgeoning, but the most pressing question remained. Would they gather around her, or would they retreat into the comfort of denial once again? As the echoes of the audience's murmurs faded into an uneasy quiet, Lucy felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. No longer could she merely act as an observer in the narrative of her community. She had become an active participant, a potential voice for change. But what if her voice faltered? What if she alienated those who held their history so tightly? As Lucy withdrew from the podium, her thoughts raced, each one sharper than the last. Could she dig deep enough to connect, to convince them of a path forward that didn't dissolve into chaos? She hadn't anticipated this shift from an educator to an activist, yet necessity often reshapes intentions. She took a moment to breathe, focusing her thoughts before she decided on her next steps. With the previous discourse still sparking in the room, Lucy strolled through the crowd, examining individual faces transformed by the weight of her words. This mingling of fear and curiosity was palpable, a tension that she needed to harness. Would they notice her vulnerability, or would they call it weakness? The line between inspiration and polarizing confrontation had never felt so fragile. "Lucy, can we talk?" The voice of Sam, a local shop owner she had known since childhood, broke through her thoughts. His eyes were warm yet shadowed with uncertainty. She nodded, inviting him to continue as they moved toward the sidelines, where the chatter muted into an intimate space. "I get what you're saying, but some of us are worried. Digging up the past might only cause pain for many." His voice wavered, caught between loyalty to his neighbors and a budding recognition of the truth she had revealed. "I understand that fear, Sam," Lucy replied, her clarity sharpening. "But what if this pain leads to healing? What if we can finally transform the hurt into something valuable?" He shifted, glancing toward the main group. "But what about the potential backlash? Some here won't take kindly to those revelations. They may see us as traitors to our own stories." For the first time, Lucy felt the underlying anxiety of her proposal crash against stark reality. What if she was pushing too hard? What if the process she envisioned led to fracture rather than unity? The risk was indeed profound. "I can't promise it will be easy," she admitted, "but every painful story told holds the potential for catharsis." Sam stepped back, digesting her words, and as he took a moment to consider, Lucy felt a surge of frustration mingle with hope. Was convincing just one person a triumph, or just the faintest whisper of what lay ahead? She understood the stakes were higher than just her own reputation. The dialogue shifted among the townsfolk, and tension swirled like a storm brewing. The tension now morphed into an unspoken challenge. Who would dare step out and voice their fears or support? Lucy gazed toward the group, trying to discern who might share her aspirations for honesty, who might stand beside her in the face of adversity. Just then, she spotted Martha's scowl from the back, her arms crossed defiantly. Another confrontation awaited, one that could strip Lucy of any emotional cushion she had constructed. "Do you really think this is the answer?" Martha's voice rang out, strident and bold, halting the discussions. "We can't afford to open that Pandora's box. Some things are better off hidden, Lucy. You risk everything for what? A conversation?" Inside, Lucy wrestled with a wave of discouragement and jealousy. How could someone as passionate as Martha dismiss her vision with such finality? "What does hiding achieve then, Martha? More scars?" The frustration seeped into her tone, blurring the line between composure and indignation. As the crowd fell silent, each gaze flicked nervously from Lucy to Martha. The room had become a stage for an unfolding drama, one where the stakes were not just history, but the future. Lucy felt exposed, battling internally to maintain her ground. She needed to pivot, to rally her growing understanding into a call to action rather than retreat into a defensive shell. "Perhaps it is time for all of us to face our darkness," she pressed on, channeling her fear into conviction, "to confront that which we have hidden so long. Together, we can decide what we want our history to be." The silence shifted. Lucy sought the flicker of courage she had felt moments before. It was in that moment she knew. To heal the rifts, she needed to not only be their leader, but their ally. Trust, she realized, would need to be built, piece by piece, conversation by conversation. What would be her next move to ignite this determination? As Lucy scanned the room, the answer felt tantalizingly close, but still just out of reach. The conversation had begun, but the pivotal question loomed. How would she spark the commitment necessary to confront the shadows of their shared past? As uncertainty hung in the air, she steeled herself for what lay ahead. Lucy's heart raced as she surveyed the crowd, an unpredictable sea of faces reflecting the uncertainty that mirrored her own. While her words had ignited a spark, potential division threatened to extinguish it before it really began. Martha's challenge had exposed the fractures within them, and Lucy grasped the foundational truth of leadership. She could not force unity, she had to cultivate it. The lingering silence felt oppressive. It pressed down on her. Each gaze that lingered represented a question unasked. How to reassure them? How to convince them that the truth they feared might just be the first step toward liberation? Ideas raced through her mind, but she knew better than to overwhelm them with enthusiasm. Instead, she sought to draw upon the emotions that pulsed in the room, wielding them as tools for connection. "Let's take a moment," she proposed, raising her palm slightly to calm the rising tensions. "What if we shared just one story each, a piece of our past that shapes how we see our community today?" Gasps and whispers rippled through the audience. She had hit a nerve, but the idea of vulnerability elicited such fear that it almost vaporized into the air. Every face was clouded with indecision, but among them, a flicker of recognition began to spark. It wasn't just her story they'd be sharing, it was theirs too. "Just one story," she reiterated, keeping her tone firm but gentle. "I know it's daunting, but it's not about blame, it's about understanding. Stories can heal, and they can connect us in ways we've hidden from ourselves." She could see Sam deliberating in the corner of her eye, his brow furrowed as if wrestling with his own past, just as she had begun to do. Finally, the tension broke like a wave crashing on the shore. "I will go first," someone called from the back, a voice that trembled but held steadfast as they stepped forward. Lucy recognized Grace, an elderly woman whose family had long intertwined with the histories of others. She had faced brutality, loss, yet stood now trembling but fierce. As Grace spoke, her voice was filled with a depth of sorrow and strength. She recounted a painful yet beautiful memory of her late husband's dream of unity amidst chaos. Lucy stood transfixed, absorbing how vulnerability opened the room. After Grace, others followed her lead, tentative but emboldened. With each story told, Lucy felt a thread of connection weaving through them, a fragile bond of shared experience they were stitching together in real time. Each tale unveiled deeper wounds, yet simultaneously offered glimpses of resilience. She recognized something monumental happening. She wasn't just watching the metamorphosis, she was part of it. Yet in the back of her mind, an unease brewed. What about those still closed off to this approach? Would the vulnerability expressed now shatter the barriers that Martha and others held close? The tension still hummed beneath the surface, and a conflict she hadn't confronted loomed larger. How to move from a shared exchange of hurt into an actionable change? Could her newfound allyship withstand the weight of history? As she continued to listen, another possibility flickered in her mind. Perhaps she could frame these stories not only as a means of healing, but as a foundation for a plan. An initiative grounded in empathy and understanding, leading toward tangible outcomes. "Thank you, Grace, and everyone for sharing," Lucy finally said, summoning all her courage. "These moments matter. We are rewriting our collective narrative today, and these stories will guide how we confront this past." The room was alive with a new intensity, yet Lucy felt the exacting responsibility crystal clear. Leading them forward meant navigating this fragile landscape of hope and fear carefully. The session concluded, but tension still lingered in the air, the journey far from over. As conversations broke out around her, she sought Martha, whose presence was as unsettling as it was powerful. It was time for confrontation. Their unresolved discord remained unsaid, and she sensed its energy stirring. As Lucy prepared to approach, she realized she needed to challenge not just Martha's resistance, but also her own growing resolve. Could she convince her of the importance of moving forward? The stakes were higher than ever, and so much hinged on the dialogue they would have next. Would this be a pathway toward resolution or something darker? The moment of confrontation approached, a fraying thread that could unravel or weave together their fates. Lucy's breath hitched as she took her first step toward Martha. The distance between them felt more than physical. It was laced with years of unspoken animosity and deeply embedded distrust. Each echo of their unresolved tensions reverberated in her mind, leaving her acutely aware of just how much she had to lose. "Martha," she said, forcing her voice to carry a steadiness she didn't quite feel. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, Lucy saw not just an adversary, but a woman hardened by her history. A woman just as afraid of the others of the truth's potential. "Lucy," Martha replied, her tone carefully measured, yet there was a quiver beneath the surface. This was the moment Lucy had anticipated, an opportunity to navigate the complex landscape of varied motivations and fears. "I believe we're at a crucial juncture," Lucy began, choosing her words with precision. "The stories shared today revealed vulnerabilities among us, but there's still a gap to bridge, and you hold considerable influence. If you joined this journey toward transparency, think how it could reshape our community." Martha hesitated, and Lucy could almost see the internal battle waging within her. The desire for change battled against the fear of opening old wounds. Just as she prepared to press further, Lucy reminded herself that compelling leadership was rooted deeply in patience and understanding. "Remember Grace's story?" she continued, her voice softened by resolve. "It was painful but cathartic. We're not proposing blame. Rather, we're seeking illumination. Imagine how powerful it could be to lead together into this newfound awareness." Martha's gaze flicked away, and for a moment, Lucy feared she had crossed a line. The walls of resistance might be far too thick for her words to penetrate. But then Martha's voice, laced with confusion and frustration, broke the silence. "Do you have any notion of how many skeletons lie in our closets? I worry about what we might uncover when we dig too deep." The doubt in Martha's tone resonated with Lucy. She felt the weight of her own struggles, the uncertainties of moving forward. But she also knew the world was never altered from a place of comfort. It was in facing fears that aspirations transformed into realities. "Martha," she implored, leaning closer, her determination tightening around each syllable. "We risk compounding our wounds by remaining silent. Change starts with discomfort. We can't expect to rebuild without exposing the cracks first." Martha's eyes narrowed slightly, contemplative now, as if she were weighing the gravity of Lucy's words. The energy in the space between them shifted, and for the first time, Lucy felt a glimmer of hope radiating from Martha's guarded demeanor, a flicker that perhaps they could navigate this treacherous path together. But just as quickly, uncertainty flooded back. Would this moment cement their alliance or fracture it further? The stakes were unfathomably high, and the space between unity and confrontation felt razor-thin. "I will think about it," Martha finally conceded, her voice barely above a whisper, the weight of authority still anchoring down her thoughts. Lucy nodded, aware that this was no definitive declaration of support, but a start, a seed planted that might still bloom or wither under scrutiny. As she stepped back, the crowd still thrummed with energy, conversations swirling around her like autumn leaves caught in the wind. What if Martha chose to block further openness, swayed by the shadows of their past? What if her own efforts were wasted, even sabotaged, by the very person she hoped could move them forward? The perception of failure loomed heavy on Lucy's heart, an oppressive reminder that leadership was a journey fraught with peril. Fractures remained, but Martha's moment of hesitation had ignited something inside her, a spark of resilience that demanded she push through. She had to gather the scattered fragments of courage from today's exchange and forge them into actionable bridges. Could she implement a plan that would harness the stories shared and catalyze change, regardless of the doubts they faced? As she stood in the now lively room where discussions thrummed with new life, imagining what might emerge from her next steps, she felt the foundations of her resolve hardening. In that moment, atmosphere of potential, she realized the next step was more than just a question of collective action. It would hinge on her ability to empower others to confront their own fears. Little did she know, someone was watching closely from the edge, a familiar figure who had been quietly assessing her every move, a lingering shadow that stirred uneasy thoughts about the ethics of power. And Lucy had no idea that confronting them would soon become a pivotal moment of self-discovery, where her own values would unfurl in ways she had never anticipated. Would she be ready for the truth swept along with it? Lucy stepped away from Martha, feeling the weight of the moment linger just beyond her grasp. Each beat of her heart echoed a silent question. How could she channel the energy radiating around her into something transformative? The crowd buzzed, conversations knitting together various threads of sentiment. Within this whirlpool of voices lay the burgeoning potential for change, yet she felt acutely aware of how fragile that potential could be. With a deep breath, Lucy found a quiet corner where she could gather her thoughts. The day's events had sparked a new urgency in her. She envisioned a strategy, one that reached beyond securing Martha's allegiance. It was time to turn the narratives unearthed through vulnerability into action. Each story shared had the power to serve as a stepping stone, yet she couldn't help but wrestle with the daunting prospect of leading this venture. Seated on an unremarkable wooden stool, she noticed the faint marks on the surface, each scratch and dent a reminder of past use. The parallels to her own struggle struck her. Those blemishes did not detract from the stool's purpose. They added character, proof of survival. Lucy let the metaphor wash over her as she began to sketch ideas on a notepad, the ink flowing freely as her mind danced through possibilities. She focused on how to empower those who had shared their stories, encouraging each individual to step into the light of authenticity. Leadership, in her mind, was not about dictating a shared path. It was about fostering environments where others felt emboldened to step forward. As she scribbled, she could envision a series of smaller discussions, safe spaces exploring each narrative further, challenging participants to unveil their personal truths. Each session could culminate in collective resolutions, reflecting the interconnectedness of their stories. But for this to take root, she needed to secure not just Martha's initial agreement, but her wholehearted commitment. The sound of drifting laughter from another group broke through her concentration. It sent a pang of longing through her. How long had it been since she had felt that free, unencumbered by the weight of responsibility? But then, that weight sharpened her focus. Leadership was solitary at times, filled with moments of uncomfortable self-reflection. It was also enriched by the knowledge that her efforts could create an environment for others to thrive. She stood, closing her notebook. It was time to confront
her fears. Channeling her resolve, she began to redefine her strategy. It would not be only about drawing Martha closer. It was a crucial window into defining who she was becoming as a leader. Could she navigate the tremor of doubt that hummed beneath her exterior? Back on the perimeter of the buzzing crowd, Lucy spotted her shadowy observer. The familiar face shifted her pulse, igniting a swirl of emotions she had tucked away. Was this figure simply monitoring her attempts at change, or were they truly considering taking part? There was history between them, a silent understanding, and the distant memories washed over her like a chill. An unexpected confrontation loomed within her today, one that might lay bare her vulnerabilities. Did she have the strength to face what lay beneath the surface between them? As she made her way through the thrumming crowd toward this person, resolve surged within her. It was time for her to own her narrative, to assert her growth in the face of uncertainty. But as she approached, an unsettling thought struck her. What if the confrontation was not solely about them? What if it morphed into something that challenged her very purpose? With skepticism warring against her determination, she lifted her chin, ready to confront not just the person before her, but the deeper truths she had yet to face. The moment of reckoning had arrived, a critical juncture where her values would be tested, and Lucy stood poised to engage.
Lucy's footsteps quickened, anxiety swirling inside her as she neared the familiar figure. A mix of anticipation and trepidation coiled our stomach, each step a reminder of the unresolved complexities that lay between them. Was she ready to confront what had once felt insurmountable? Questions ricocheted in her mind. What did this meeting signify for her trajectory as a leader? How much of her past would she need to unpack to navigate this conversation? The figure turned, and Lucy locked eyes with Michael. His expression was unreadable, a mask of calm concealing the turmoil she suspected lay beneath. Moments slipped by, the heightened tension stretching every second into eternity. She took a steadying breath, forcing herself to meet his gaze directly. This was her opportunity, not just to address their shared history, but to redefine her place in that narrative. "You've been watching from the sidelines," she began, her voice even despite the quaver within. "Why now? Why choose to engage?" The question hung in the air, heavy with expectation. She felt a rush of vulnerability, forcing the fixation of past grievances into the open. Michael hesitated, searching her face, as if he were weighing the risk of honesty. "I thought, maybe, I could offer something," he replied slowly. "But I wasn't sure you'd want to hear it, not after everything." His response ignited something within her. Did she want to hear it? The past had shaped her leadership aspirations, and perhaps it was time to confront that pain if it meant moving forward.
"I appreciate your honesty," she said, lifting her chin further. "But I can't hide from my past anymore, and neither can you. If we're going to build something meaningful, we need to address the real conversations." Michael nodded, his tension visibly easing, yet the weight of their history loomed large. "What if we're not ready?" he asked, softly, a hint of fear threading through his words. Lucy recognized this fear. It echoed her own hesitations about responsibility. She understood that transformation demanded both risk and authenticity, and she had no intention of shying away. "We won't know until we try," she replied, the conviction in her voice surprising even her. "But it starts here. I need you to be honest, with me, with yourself. It's the only way we can move forward." As the gravity of her words settled in, she could see a shift in Michael's demeanor. The walls he had built around himself began to crack, echoing her own internal awakening. With that, a newfound understanding blossomed between them, a tentative bridge towards shared purpose. The ground seemed to shift beneath her, stirring her deeper sense of mission. As Lucy illustrated her vision for the discussions to come, energizing her resolve, she came to realize that her personal growth hinged on inviting others to be part of that journey. It registered like a drumbeat within her. She was not just shaping the course for others, but also for herself. "How do we start?" Michael asked, a flicker of hope glimmering in his voice. Lucy took a moment to reflect on the gravity of his question. The answer held both promise and risk. "We start by sharing our truths, unvarnished and raw. It's the only way to build trust." The challenge ahead would not come without discomfort, but Lucy felt the sting of doubt receding against the rising tide of purpose. She leaned in closer, the energy palpable. "Are you with me?" The question loomed, weighted with implications. As Michael met her gaze, Lucy realized they were standing at the edge of transformation, and she felt a powerful shift within herself. Just as Michael opened his mouth to respond, a familiar face cut through the crowd, slicing the moment with its urgency. A sudden realization dawned upon Lucy. This was not merely about her journey or reconciliation with Michael. Something larger was on the horizon, an unforeseen convergence that could challenge everything she was building. "Lucy!" shouted the voice, commanding attention and pulling her focus away. In that instant, she felt the tides of uncertainty and potential collide. The moment was ripe for revelation, an unmistakable signal that the path she had envisioned was about to twist in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. The momentary disruption shifted the atmosphere, a new gravity, despite Lucy's acknowledgeable inner tumult. She turned her head sharply, locking eyes with Jenna, her longtime mentor and friend, who weaved through the crowd with an expression that spoke of urgency and unfiltered concern. "Lucy, we need to talk, now." Jenna's tone was low, but it rang with an unmistakable authority that left no room for argument. Michael's presence faded into the backdrop, his earlier resolve melting away under the weight of a brewing storm. Lucy's heart raced, her mind a tangle of confusion and curiosity. Was this urgent call to action a distraction or an essential breaking point? She glanced back at Michael, whose expression mirrored that same mix of apprehension and annoyance. They had just begun to peel back the layers of their complex history. Now, it seemed, the universe had other plans. "Can't it wait?" Lucy ventured, but even as the words slipped from her lips, she knew this conversation couldn't be ignored. Jenna wouldn't come all this way without grave cause, a truth Lucy understood all too intimately. "No, the situation is critical. I need you to trust me," Jenna pressed, her eyes pleading yet firm, reminding Lucy of the responsibility they held in their respective roles. In the moment, Lucy felt a strange dichotomy within her. A commitment to her own journey contrasted sharply with the urgency of another's dire needs. Reluctantly, Lucy turned back to Michael and offered a strange smile. "Let's pause for now, but we will continue this. We're just getting started." The comment hung awkwardly between them, a fragile promise balanced on the edge of uncertainty. With that, Lucy followed Jenna, who led the way through the crowd, the pulse of the surrounding conversations fading as they distanced themselves from the intimate chaos of her earlier encounter. Each step deepened Lucy's inner conflict. Tension coiled within her, not just about the unexpected divergence, but also concerning what this news might entail for her future as a leader. Once they found a quiet corner away from prying ears, Jenna leaned closer, the concern in her eyes fully exposed. "There's been an escalation. It involves the project we thought was under control," she whispered, her voice urgent. "We need to reevaluate everything. Some decisions we make could have rippling effects, Lucy." Lucy swallowed hard, her previous sense of momentum evaporating. "What do you mean? Is this about our partners?" The walls of her carefully constructed plan suddenly felt thinner, filled with vulnerabilities she hadn't anticipated. Every step she'd taken to reclaim her narrative had been punctuated by progress, yet now it appeared that foundation was fragile and at risk. "Yes, but it's more than that," Jenna replied, pacing slightly. "There's a deeper element, one that goes back further than we might have imagined. We need to confront not only where we are now, but how we got here." As the weight of Jenna's words settled in, Lucy felt her emotional landscape shift. This moment was not just about confronting Michael or their past, but about grappling with the unknown complexities that define their journey. Would confronting this new crisis require her to strip back more layers of herself, to wrestle with uncomfortable truths, even if it meant jeopardizing her fragile momentum forward? "Are you prepared for that?" Jenna pressed, her gaze steady and unwavering. Lucy inhaled sharply, a rush of determination building within her. This was not merely about avoidance or complacency, it was an opportunity to craft a response rooted in authenticity. "I am," she replied, the conviction strong and undeniable. Yet as those words left her lips, another revelation dawned in her mind. How much of her authentic leadership had been fueled by a desire to quiet unfinished business, unresolved hurt? What if addressing these layers led to unexpected revelations? As she squared her shoulders against the encroaching doubt, Lucy realized the convergence she had felt moments before had presented her with an unforeseen choice: embrace transformation or retreat into comfort. Before she could formulate a response to Jenna's inquiry, troubling thoughts spooled out like thread. How to balance what lay ahead while liberating the parts of herself she still held in silence. What happens next? She wondered aloud, curiosity mixing with a rising anxiety. But even that question paled in comparison to the real matter at hand. Jenna's face tightened, conveying that their next move would define more than just the trajectory of their project. The tension was palpable, the implications both daunting and invigorating. Prepare yourself. This might lead to confrontations that test everything you know about leadership, Jenna warned, drawing Lucy's focus back to the task at hand. In that instant, Lucy understood that the stirring within her was not just about navigating her past with Michael, it was about facing her purpose head-on, being unflinchingly authentic along the way.
And as they moved deeper into the unknown complexities of their project's unraveling, Lucy's conviction was solidified. She wouldn't simply confront the layers of her past, she would redefine them, wielding each uncomfortable truth as a tool for her evolution. As thoughts raced through her mind, she grasped that this was just the beginning. The real conversation, the one that could change everything, still awaited her, echoing loudly in the recesses of her determination and uncertainty. In the aftermath of Jenna's revelation, Lucy felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her. The project she had poured her heart and soul into now teetered on the brink of disruption. Every story she had shared, every truth unearthed, felt tangled in a web of deeper complexities than she had anticipated. Lucy stood at a precipice, the weight of collective expectations mingled with her own aspirations for change. Compelled into action, Lucy gathered the remaining threads of her resolve. She needed to redirect the energy from the encounter with Martha, the unsettling exchange with Michael, and now the urgency of Jenna's warning. This was more than just a personal quest. It was a call to galvanize others into facing the pain and potential dividend of confronting their shared past together. The time had come to take decisive steps. Emboldened by a new sense of purpose, she turned to Jenna. "I need more information about what we're facing. We'll craft a plan, one that incorporates these unforeseen layers." Jenna's eyes lit up at Lucy's resolve. "We must approach this methodically, transforming fear into a roadmap for change." The phrase struck a chord within Lucy. Transformation would be a key element not solely for herself, but for the entire community. It won't just be about revealing shadows, it would encompass an evolution led by the united front she dared to envision. With a renewed focus, Lucy reached out to the very individuals who had voiced their truths in the town hall. It was pivotal to create a space where each was encouraged to own their narratives and contribute meaningfully to the forthcoming plan. Through vulnerability, they could chart an authentic path forward, a journey through their shared history that would lift them rather than fracture them. Days rolled into weeks, and as she led discussions reviewing the community's stories, a palpable change began to rise within her. Each session unearthed both wounds and wisdom. She found herself embracing the uneasiness that came from dissecting harsh truths, while nurturing the insights gained from grappling with them. The intensity of those dialogues shaped her voice more firmly. Each story told was a testament to resilience that echoed far beyond the gathering walls. As she ventured deeper into this communal introspection, Lucy realized the battle fought wouldn't merely be against the past. It would reach out into their future, shaping perceptions of heritage and identity. The more she fostered these conversations, the more she grew. Her once doubtful demeanor transformed into a solid confidence. She wasn't just revealing shadows, she was guiding a movement, and the impact was irrefutable. The pivotal moment came when they collectively reached a consensus to host an open forum, a public unveiling of their stories and learnings. It would be a powerful statement of shared experience, confronting their history head-on rather than shying away from it. They would take ownership of their narrative, not out of shame, but through unity and understanding. As the night of the forum approached, Lucy stood in front of a mirror, bracing herself for the culmination of their journey. The woman looking back was resolute, embodying the confidence born from navigating the turbulent waters of history, her own fears, and the complexities of leadership. She realized that she had transformed from a teacher into a leader and advocate. Her once disoriented path had solidified into a clear direction. On the evening of the event, the atmosphere was electric, the room packed with community members ready to witness the unfolding of their shared truths. Lucy stepped onto the platform, her heart racing in sync with the energy around her. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice radiating the strength she'd cultivated. "What we are sharing today is not our burden alone. It is our collective journey. We are here to shine a light on our past, not to punish, but to learn and grow." As she continued, Lucy felt the weight of her heritage shift from a source of shame to one of empowerment. Each story she had cultivated, engaged with, had fortified her position, equipping her with tangible authority. By confronting their past, she understood that she was also secure in her own truth as an Erdmannsdorff, one intent on change, healing, and understanding. The forum unfolded with powerful narratives echoing throughout the hall, each revelation weaving their collective past into a tapestry rich with nuance. The conversations gained substance, hearts and minds began to shift. Validation washed over her when she looked across the crowd and caught Martha's approving gaze. Her earlier opposition transformed into tentative support. At that moment, Lucy Erdmannsdorff realized her personal journey of growth had culminated into a broader movement for transformation. Through courage and vulnerability, she had navigated the realms of doubt to accomplish something deeply meaningful. Not only notifiable change for herself, but profound hope for her community. As the night concluded and people began to rise from their seats with newfound conviction, Lucy felt a surge of pride. She had achieved more than unveiling layers of their history. She had catalyzed a recognition of their shared humanity, a resolution built upon bricks of honesty. Amidst the bustling exit, as Lucy basked in the residue of accomplishment, she turned to Jenna, her steadfast ally. "We've done it," she said, the air thick with accomplishment. "This is our beginning." Jenna nodded, her gaze filled with the warmth of camaraderie. "This is how we honor our past. We elevate the lessons learned and transform them into our future." With that affirmation, Lucy knew she had conquered the greatest obstacle of all. Her internal fears had strengthened rather than restrained her. She had successfully transformed not just her relationship to her family legacy, but had redefined her place within it. A recognized educator, an advocate of truth, and a leader distinguished by authenticity. Lucy Erdmannsdorff now stood at the forefront of a community ready to engage its past, emboldened by her fight. Thriving in her newfound position, she was prepared to guide them into a future steeped in understanding, together navigating the intricate dance of history and healing. This was her achievement, personal fulfillment through shared narratives, and she could face whatever came next with unshakable confidence. Now, if you have embraced Lucy's journey of transformation and newfound purpose, it's time to make a stand. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. The difference you matters. Comment your reactions and theories about Lucy's impactful journey. Engage with us. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspirational conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to uplift others through the power of storytelling. Now, if you have embraced Lucy's journey of transformation and newfound purpose, it's time to make a stand. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. The difference you matters. Comment your reactions and theories about Lucy's impactful journey. Engage with us. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspirational conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to uplift others through the power of storytelling.